Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Here's Perry, to Gar Hurd. Here's the jump shot.
Comes to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Oliver, Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to 7 Seconds or Less, a podcast about the NBA and the Phoenix Suns. My name is Max McCauley, a.k.a. Podcast Boy, and I am joined, as always, by David Nash, a.k.a. Darth Nash. David, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Max. It's lottery week. I'm rolling with the nickname at least for probably the month of May, I'm guessing, and we can keep bringing that one up on the pod, but we've got another guest with us this week, and I'm excited to jump into another one of these episodes.
Yeah, we have an excellent guest today. Some would say the perfect guest because he covers kind of exactly what we're going to talk about today. He covers the Philadelphia 76ers for the Athletic Philadelphia and Liberty Ballers. He covers Gonzaga men's basketball for the Gonzaga Bulletin. He writes more broadly about the NBA and NBA draft also. He is the obviously prolific Jackson Frank. Jackson, thanks for joining us.
The obvious prolific, wow.
I just named like 7 outlets, man. You're definitely prolific.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, you're perfect for this one because we're going to talk about the playoffs, focusing on a couple Game 7s that you may have some investment in. As I said, you cover the Sixers, but you're also a Blazers fan. Is that right?
Yeah, I think for a while, most people just either assumed they didn't know what my fandom was or they assumed I was a Sixers fan, but I've tried to be more vocal about my Blazers fandom in recent months. I think most people now who interact with me on a regular basis know where my allegiance lies. So
I was actually one of those people, Jackson. I was like, hey, who are you a fan of? Because I didn't know, and you're like, look at my header, idiot. It has like 75 Damian Lillard faces on it.
No, I got Brandon Roy rocking on my header. It's
yeah, not Damian Lillard, Brandon Roy, right?
Yeah, but like you said, big Game 7 coming up in a couple days. Biggest game the Blazers have played, and God, as long as I've been alive, I think not alive, excuse me, as long as I've been a fan. Obviously, the 2000 Western Conference Finals, but I don't know, 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever it was.
Yeah, the only one that's coming to mind to me is when the Suns eliminated you guys in 2010. Honestly, other than that, I can't think of anything.
Got to get that in there.
The year was that, I think either the second year in a row they lost, or maybe the second or third year in a row they lost in the first round during the Roy and Aldridge era.
Well, at least you make the playoffs. At least you make the playoffs. Beyond that, we're going to talk about the NBA draft. Obviously, the lottery is upon us. So we're going to continue our prospect series with Jarrett Culver, Coby White, and Rui Hachimura, who's from Gonzaga. And then we're also going to dive into the big names a little bit. We're going to do Zion, RJ, and Ja Morant to a greater extent than we've done before. Because we want to talk about those guys before the Suns get the 7th pick next week.
It might be our last chance to get excited about some of these guys, particularly Zion, Max.
Yeah, exactly. But David, before we move on to any of this stuff, speaking of the lottery, do you want to give a little preview about that and a little recap of what's going on?
Yeah, as I said, it's coming up this week. Hopefully we get this pod out with enough time for people to listen before the lottery, but it's going to be Tuesday, May 14th for you guys in the US and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, although I'm a little skeptical that it'll start at that time. That's when the televised portion of it begins, but that's 5:30 for you in Phoenix, Max, and it's Wednesday in the future for me at 10:30 a.m., so I'll be doing my usual making sure I can try and watch it while pretending to work thing.
I mean, if I were you, I would probably just not watch it because it's painful as hell.
It is very painful. It's, I guess, getting into that, the Suns' odds of number 1 are, of course, 14%. 13.4% at number 2, 12.7% at number 3, and 11.9% at number 4. The most likely is 26% at number 6, Max, 14.8% if we stay at 5 there, and we have a small 7.1% chance of the 7th pick in the draft. But for those who don't know, there's bit of a process that it goes through. The televised portion of it is really just the bells and whistles part. The boring part goes behind locked doors to begin with, and there's 1,001 combinations that can get drawn out. The order doesn't matter. They pull 4 numbers out, and the Suns will have 140 of those 1,000 combinations, and it can be repeated if the same combo comes out a couple of times, which I think actually happened last year 3 times, with the Suns getting the number 1 pick 3 times in a row. But just interestingly, off the back of that, I went back through the last 5 years, Max. The last 4 years, the first pick's actually gone to the team sitting in first. Obviously, the rules were a little different, and there was a 25% chance there, so it's evened out a little bit more. But Phoenix, Brooklyn, Philly, and Minnesota all were in the number 1 slot and won the lottery. You have to go back to 2014, where Cleveland jumped up from 9th with a 1.7% chance and won the number 1 pick.
Yeah, Cleveland does well in these lotteries, don't they? I will say the last thing before we move on a little bit is that we'll get into Ja Morant later. I'm definitely lower on him as a preview.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what was it, the 13.4% chance to get number 2? That kind of feels like a 100% chance to me. I know we're going to get him, and I'm going to have to, it's the same thing as the Ayton thing. I'm going to have to be the guy who is the Scrooge forever. So I just feel like that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting where this pick lands, and therefore I guess what our podcast topics are going to be for the next month or so, Max. But as we said before, I'm excited to talk about all these guys without knowing just yet for at least one more time.
Me too. But before we get into any of that stuff, let's get to the playoffs a little bit. We got a playoff game going on now. Jackson, let's start with the Sixers and the Raptors. You obviously cover the Sixers. What are you looking for in Game 7 of this series, which has really just been a complete roller coaster?
Yeah, no, it's been a weird series. There's been, two or 3 games of the 6 so far that have actually been close. There's been a lot of blowout. I mean, I think games 1, 3, 5, and 6 were all, so 2 games. We had games 2 and 3 were close, or games 2 and 4, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of those people for a lot of the regular season, not a lot of it. Once after the Sixers traded for Tobias Harris, and they had that great starting 5, and they were beating a lot of good teams and whatnot. And I thought they had a good chance to beat Toronto. I liked that they had a lot of star power and scoring upside in the starting lineup. And then obviously the issues with Embiid surfaced, and they extended into the first round. And I was pretty skeptical. I didn't think the team's best player could be at 65%, 60%, and them have a chance. And yet he's been at worse than that some of the games, and here they are in Game 7. So it shows I have no idea what I'm talking about, I guess, after watching them for 95 games still, or 90 games. But I think it's going to come down to Embiid. He wasn't.
Yeah, and wasn't Embiid like plus 40 or something in the last game, Jackson?
Yeah, he was plus 40 last game in 36 minutes, and they were minus 29 in the other 11 minutes, or 12 minutes, excuse me. Part of that was their garbage. I mean, they gave up a bunch of points in garbage time. They only ended up winning by 11 or whatever, but obviously they were up by 20 most of the second half. And then the fact that Boban was just kind of a disaster yesterday in the brief minutes he played. And so while I think obviously Embiid is a really good player, he's kind of in that right around top 10 range for me. A lot of those plus minus statistics make him look really good because the Sixers backup center spot is arguably the worst in the NBA in terms of playoff.
You know who may have helped? Them, Jackson, is Rashawn Holmes.
He had a lot better year in Phoenix than he did last year in Philly and the years before that. But yeah, no, I think even he could have helped, but he had his own issues. He was I know he was pretty solid defensively from what I recall reading and watching this year. But he was a lot of offense only in Philly. But you are right. I think he would be more useful than Amir Johnson and Jonah Bolden and Greg Monroe.
Yeah, it's not good. And I very much agree with you, and then I'll pass to you, David. To me, this just comes down to, I know Jimmy Butler is going to show up in this Game 7. I know Kawhi Leonard is going to show up in this Game 7. Who else shows up? Are Simmons and Embiid and Harris going to show up? Is literally anyone else in Toronto going to show up? That's kind of what it comes down to me, because, man, that's been the story of this series, hasn't it? It's been, the games the Sixers lose, it's only Jimmy Butler. The games that Toronto loses, it's only Kawhi. The games where one of the teams wins, one doesn't, is when their supporting cast shows up. And I agree with you. I mean, Embiid is the obvious candidate, but I think that if Harris and Simmons show up, or any combination of Phillies guys show up, or if Lowry decides to have a big moment in playoffs, for once in his career, or if Pascal Siakam recovers and plays well, I think that's good enough. It's just, to me, these Game 7s are always wars, and the good guys show up, and it's just who else is going to be there to just to stand toe-to-toe when it matters.
Yeah, it's a great point, Max. The secondary cast is really what this is going to come down to. And as Jackson said at the top there, the natural leaning is to kind of go with Toronto as the home team. But, with the pressure that they're faced in the past and, failing to that pressure, it'll be interesting whether Philly can play free and loose and maybe have the upset there. But I'm just kind of locked in on the narrative and what it means for either team that loses Game 7 and the impact to those teams. Does Kawhi leave the Raptors and that be his last game there and maybe partly because no one stood up other than him throughout the whole series, or are there ramifications for what Philly do not making it out of the second round? But maybe we should transition now to the Denver-Portland stuff, Max.
Yeah, let's do it. But you make a good point there. We should have touched on that earlier. That series means more than just who goes on the playoffs. That means a lot.
Yep.
Jackson, let's move on to Portland. Your team. Before we go on to the actual games in the Game 7, I have to ask you because David and I have watched a lot of crazy Suns playoff games. Not recently, obviously, but in the 2000s. But I definitely never watched a 4 overtime playoff game as a fan. What was it like as a fan to experience?
Stressful.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, last Friday was stressful. It was fun. It was all about. It was what being super invested in a team was all about. At one point, I don't know if it was the second or third overtime. I want to say third, but McCollum took a really tough step back 2 or 3 and bricked it, and then Millsap came down and scored on Rodney Hood or something, and I was livid. I didn't understand. I didn't know that. I guess they took Harkless out because he was cramping, which is a perfectly reasonable thing for your body to do. But I didn't realize that he was cramping, and so I was just like, why the hell is Rodney Hood in? He's and you're putting him on Paul Millsap, and I threw my phone across the living room, thinking it was just gonna land under the table or something, and it connected with the wall, and now there's probably about a 4-inch incision in the wall. So not ideal. My housemates are not happy. They'll have to come in my own pocket, unfortunately, to fix that. But it was super stressful. But obviously they ended up winning. It was just a super fun game, and it made me proud to root for a team that showed that much resilience and never kind of backed down. And they kept. It felt like every overtime when the Blazers took a little bit of a lead early in the part of the overtime, and then Denver responded like they were going to win, and then the Blazers had to respond. I think it's the type of thing every fan should experience, but I wouldn't want them to experience it more than once because I don't think it'd be healthy for them.
Max, I would love to be able to deal with a problem like a hole in my wall from watching a playoff game. That's a problem that I would happily take on. Yeah,
I used to deal with that problem all the time. I used to make holes in my walls with playoff games. It's been a long time. I haven't been able to act like a crazy person in a while. Only on Twitter yelling about Igor, which I loved your point about how you were mad about the Harkless thing at the time, but then realized later, wait, he had cramps. How can I possibly know that? Just a general, we should always realize that when we're criticizing coaches, we don't know what's going on all the time. Sometimes we do, but not always, and that's a good example of the not always times. But let's go on to the Game 7, because, your team's about to play in the Game 7. Some fans, when that happens, are neurotic as hell and think they have no chance. Other fans are just, ridiculously, hopelessly optimistic and think there's no chance they lose. I don't know where you're at on that one, Jackson, because Dave and I actually talked about this earlier. We don't love your guys' chances. So let's see what you have to say.
Yeah, no, I don't love them either. I think it's perfectly reasonable. You're playing on the road. I would be lying if I said, yeah, I'm super confident in the Blazers pulling it out 2 days from now. But at the same time, like we said with the Philly series, it's Game 7. Things get weird. So yeah, I don't like their chances, but I'm someone who thinks you got a team with experience like this, good coaching, great leadership, great star talent at the top, and anything could happen. Maybe McCollum goes off again, maybe Seth Curry gets hot. But yeah, I've obviously been a Blazers fan for a long time. I've never experienced a game like this. I think we talked about it before we started recording, but the last time they won this many games of the postseason was 2000, and I believe I was was two at the time, 2 or 3.
Jesus Christ, you are young as shit.
You're making us both feel very old.
So this is the only time they've really had a legit chance to win a second round series in a long while.
They've put up a good fight, and I just think that, Max and I were talking about this privately, so I'll throw it to you, Jackson. But if they were to pinch Game 7 here off Denver, I think there's a legitimate chance, even with KD out, that maybe we get one of those series where they advance and then get trounced. Because I really like the Denver matchup against Golden State, particularly if KD's out for a few games. Do you agree with that, even as a Portland fan, that we're probably more than likely going to get a better Western Conference Finals if Denver goes through?
I just think Denver's a better team than Portland. So I would agree that the better team with the matchup advantage inside would put up a better fight. And I would probably pick. I don't know what I have to think about that. But I would be happy to see Denver winning 2 or 3, or maybe winning it all if KD's out or something.
It seems like a good time to maybe jump to some predictions, Max, because this is all going to date pretty quickly, and by the time the listeners are jumping on this podcast, a lot of these Game 7s might be decided. So maybe we put it on the line. I'll start off. I'm going to go Philly, Golden State, and Denver. How about you? Do you differ at all, Max?
Wow, I'm surprised you went Philly. I think Toronto's got a pretty big advantage in that game. I'm going to go Golden State, and I'm not going to lie, even though my head's telling me to take Denver because the Millsap matchup is it's overwhelming. It really is.
Yeah, he's been crushing everyone this series.
They don't have anyone to guard him. Like, they have no one to guard Millsap. Literally no one.
Well, Amina's been terrible this series. So
Amina's been terrible. But they maybe they found something with Collins. Probably not, but maybe. I don't care. Game 7s are ugly. They're all out drag out fights. And in a game like that, I don't trust anyone on Denver. I mean, their Game 7 performance against the San Antonio Spurs was not exactly great. You were right to reference it as a good experience building thing, but they weren't good in that game. They were terrible. They were saved by the fact that San Antonio was horrible.
Yeah, they nearly choked it away, right?
They not only did they nearly choke it away, they just were bad all game.
Yeah, that's true.
I just trust Dame. I trust Dame, and not only do I just trust Dame, I trust CJ McCollum too, who I've kind of been down on and low on in my in his whole career, but man, these playoffs, he's really shown me something.
He's been awesome.
He's really shown the value of a mid-range scorer, like somebody who can get his own shot. So I don't know. I just trust Portland. I don't trust Jamal Murray. I know he's been good lately, but I could see him falling off. I don't know. Whatever reason, I trust Portland. All right. So with that, Jackson, what do you think?
I'm gonna go. Oh man. I think Toronto wins. I think they have home court advantage. I think that matters. Do better than they did in Game 6. So I'll go Toronto there, and then I'm going to give it to Golden State. I think they're up 3-2 with home court advantage still. But whether or not KD plays, I just trust them a little more. For whatever reason, I could be wrong. I'm kind of one of those people that is when Golden State loses, they'll lose. I'm happy to be wrong about picking against them, but until then, I'm just going to pick with the two-time defending champions. And then, yeah, it's tough with Denver and Portland. I think Dame's shown some signs of fatigue. Obviously, he was great last night, but he's just had to work so flipping hard for about 2 months now, or a month and a half since Nurkic went down. I mean, they went like 11-2 after the Nurkic injury without Nurkic or McCollum, and I think he had to work so hard there. So I'm going to go Denver. I just think they have home court advantage. I think they don't have that Portland has no one to stop Jokic. I think Murray's kind of in a little bit of a groove, but I think it's going to be a close game.
Mike Malone's got to be just like a big sigh of relief after he almost went out to San Antonio in the first round if it weren't for Jamal Murray exploding in the fourth quarter of Game 2. All right, let's move on to our draft stuff. Before we get into it, we're going to start with the big guys, but we always like to ask our guests kind of what their draft philosophies are. Because I think it's interesting and important to know, like, what do people think differentiates them from other draft scouts? Because we all look at the obvious stuff, the talent, the athleticism. But Jackson, what do you think when you watch guys and when you rank guys, et cetera, what do you think you do differently than everybody else does?
I've only really been doing this in depth I did a little bit last year. I really dove into it late in the season. So I'm really still trying to figure a lot of that out. For me, I try and project what I think a guy's role is going to be in the NBA. how I think he's going to be used, how teams view him. So just for example, a guy I'm a little lower on than consensus, which is I think most people are on draft Twitter are low on him compared to consensus, is a guy like RJ Barrett, because I think he's who a lot of people see him as number one option, and that worries me. A guy maybe a little higher on than some would be a guy like Romeo Langford, because I think he is going to be put in a role where he's not a first option. So for me, it's trying to figure out how much value a guy is going to return in his role, because that's the name of the game. You know, if it's a guy who's going to make $8 million or $12 million a year, maybe isn't as good as the guy who's making $30 million a year, but I want the guy who I think has better bang for his buck. But yeah, I said it a couple minutes ago, but that's just a really good question. It's something I'm still kind of searching for. And once I think I start to nail it down, I'll be a lot more confident in my rankings. And
yeah, it makes sense. And it's important to know kind of what you don't know always, really when evaluating everything, but especially when evaluating the draft. I see people, and I understand, like, you know, just like, we'll get to him later, but guys like RJ Barrett, like, you should never, I don't care who you are, you shouldn't have RJ Barrett 20th in this draft class. There's a reason why he was considered the best guy going into college. Like, it's just, you're probably wrong if every single scout in the world thinks he's top 5 and you think he's 20. You have to somewhat defer to people. But anyway, that's a tangent. Let's move on to Zion Williamson, because we want to talk about him because he's fun. Jackson, we've been asking all our guests this question. What do you think Zion Williamson's biggest weakness is?
His biggest weakness? Oh, man. Yeah, that's a tough one, because there's so many things he does really, really, really well.
He is very good at a lot of things. That is true.
Yeah. I think I'm a little lower on, maybe not on his defense in general, but a little lower on his gambling when it comes to defense. You know, he is a defensive playmaker, and I think I'm someone who frowns upon gambling. That's something I'm really trying to kind of shift my ideology, because the more I talk with people, the more it shows instincts and the ability to be a defensive playmaker. And so I'm trying to shift that belief, because I've always kind of been kind of the traditional, you know, if you gamble for a steal and don't get it, that's a bad play no matter what. But just talking with a lot of smart people, sometimes it's a sign of instincts, but you just don't quite have the athleticism or the reaction time. But then I think a cop-out answer is still the shot. I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's going to be Ben Simmons or anything, or a non-shooter. But I do wonder, you know, how much our team's going to respect him from there. I worry that comes off as kind of the hot shot radio guy who doesn't know Zion Williams he can't shoot, he's terrible. But
Zion Williams.
But yeah, so I think a little bit is the gambling. You know, obviously he's a freak athlete. And he's not just a freak athlete. He makes freak athletes look like relatively not good athletes. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I just think, you know, in the NBA, guys are smart and they can move the ball fast. They can throw passes faster, make skip passes better. So I just wonder a little bit how that gambling kind of translates, because it was so impactful at Duke. So that would be me. And I do think he needs to cut weight a little bit. Not a ton, but obviously I'm not worried about that, because I think people forget a lot that being in college, you still don't have that much free time. So when you devote your whole life to being a basketball player, and you can just you don't have to go to class, you don't have to worry about doing homework. And I get that a lot of these athletes, they're not necessarily studying for 6 hours a day, but they still gotta work that stuff around their schedule.
Yeah.
So I would say just shooting a little bit, but mainly, I guess my biggest question, I don't know if it's a concern, but I'm curious to just see how the gambling and the defensive playmaking translates, because that was such a huge part of his game at Duke this year.
Yeah, that was the Donovan Mitchell thing. Your favorite guy, who you think's better than Devin Booker. Sorry, I had to unleash that at one point. He was really big on the whole, I'm not studying class anymore. I get to play basketball 24/7. So there you go. That was kind of his thing too. David, let's start with you on this one, and then we'll rotate around to Jackson, then I'll finish on this one.
Yeah.
A big question has, for some reason, emerged, in my opinion, not a real question, but what do you think about Zion's fit with DeAndre Ayton? And you can go to the Suns more generally, but really the focus has been on Zion's fit with DeAndre Ayton. Do you think it works or doesn't work?
I have literally no concerns, Max. I would probably go the other way to saying that I absolutely love the fit with DeAndre Ayton. You and I have spoken about it quite a bit on and off the pod, but, you know, obviously people are going to nitpick at the outside shooting, but, you know, I would start him at power forward. I'd just make sure that, you know, the other three guys from point guard to small forward can all shoot the rock a little bit, and I don't think you have any problems there. His weak side rim protection stuff is perfect with Ayton, because as you and I have both noted, that's probably Ayton's biggest weakness right now as a center anchoring the defense. And then the effort that he brings and the impact plays, as Jackson mentioned before, and just bringing everyone up a level. Again, something that you and I have discussed quite a bit. We've spoken about leadership quite a lot on this roster, but also just overall effort, the impact that someone like Kelly Oubre had, and why the fans really drew to Kelly, I think, is because of the effort that he showed out there compared to what we're used to. So I really have no concerns at all, Max. I think Kelly Oubre is a great guy to, I guess, compare Zion to a little way in the way that they used him down the stretch there. I think that's really how you would use Zion very early on, kind of have him coming off curls from the corner, get him going downhill, use Ayton's gravity, Booker's gravity, and as I said, make sure he's got plenty of spacing and shooters out there with him, and I really don't see any other reason to be down on it. But, probably my last point there is I'd also stagger. I'd probably give Williamson the quick pull, maybe 5 or 6 minutes into games, if he's playing with Ayton, and then I'd probably stagger them quite a bit and make sure Zion gets some chances to really operate down low without Ayton in there, particularly until Ayton can prove as a bit of a stretch guy for the Suns. So yeah, I'm really not concerned about it. I think there's things that you can do with them on the court, and then, as I said, separating them a little bit to have them playing without each other a little bit. But what do you think on that, Max? I think you probably should jump in here and give us your thoughts.
Oh, sure, yeah, and then we'll get to Jackson. I totally agree, especially defensively. So Jackson's answer, I think, is right. Zion's a bit of a gambler on defense, although it often works out well for him, at least in college. But he also, I would say, I don't know if he's really proven as a lateral defender. Totally, he's not terrible at it, but if you one-on-one on the perimeter versus somebody who's really kind of matches athleticism, I don't know if he's the best at that. Mm-hmm. And really, that's Ayton's best trait. And we saw that a lot with Giannis this season. They only played twice, and the Milwaukee Bucks probably weren't trying their very, very hardest against the Suns.
Yeah.
But Ayton actually was really good against Giannis.
And LeBron too.
And LeBron, yeah. He sort of has the perfect mix of the lateral quickness and the quick feet for a guy of his size, but also being big enough to actually bother guys of those sizes. So you're totally right that Zion with the weak side rim protection, it would cover up for Ayton's weaknesses. But in some ways, I think Ayton, as much as he's maligned on defense, would kind of cover up for Zion's weakness on that end as well. In terms of just Zion's not the guy you want on the perimeter guarding guys like Giannis, who are those freaks, or even Kevin Durant, guys who are the freaks who are huge, who can also move like guards. Yeah, that's actually, I think Ayton's better suited for that. So they kind of both cover for each other?
Yeah, I think they both kind of blanket guys on the perimeter. I think what you said there about Zion's spot on. I think on smaller, less athletic guys, he's able to kind of what I would call blanket, and even if they get a little first step on him, he kind of is able to recover and shade them through the paint to the point where they're really worried about him. And I think that's the thing that the Suns used very well with Ayton late in the piece as well. So yeah, I think that's a great point by you, them being able to interchange between each other. And probably the only other thing that I forgot to mention is I think between the two of them, the touch around the rim would be insane on the offensive end. I just don't think we would miss much around the rim with those two guys finishing off plays.
No, not at all. And I'll make one last point off that, and then we'll go to Jackson. I think on offense, there is a one question mark, and it's a pretty big question mark. I think one of the two has to be able to shoot. But I feel pretty good about that happening. First of all, I think just Ayton alone, I feel pretty good about him being able to shoot eventually because his touch is, as you mentioned, so good. And he's been good for the free throw line from a very long time. I'd be surprised if Ayton in 3 years can't shoot threes, at least the Joel Embiid level. It'd be surprising to me. And then Zion, I'm probably a little less high on, even though he was a better three-point shooter in college because his free throw percentage is not great. But, I just believe so much in Zion in so many ways. His athleticism, his work ethic. I think there's a pretty good chance he becomes a good shooter, too. So if you combine the two good chances with those two guys, I feel like there's a very low chance that at least one of them can't shoot. And I think that's what opens them up on offense.
Do you know what I love about Duke version of Zion, Max? And this is probably a great way to throw to Jackson here because he mentioned Ben Simmons before. Zion at Duke was willing to shoot. The athleticism that he portrays, all those times that he was left open on the three-point line, he probably could have just attacked the space anyway and finished at the rim most of the time, but he already showed an understanding that he needs to shoot that shot when he's open, particularly going into the pros. So, I'll throw to you, Jackson. What do you think between, I guess, that comparison there to someone like Ben Simmons? Is the fact that Zion's at least willing to shoot and had okay percentages on those open looks as well, is that a better thing going into the pros than, I guess, someone like Ben Simmons who's 2 or 3 years in now and is still unwilling to take those shots?
No, for sure. The sheer willingness to shoot distinguishes those two guys apart. I would say I think I'm more confident in Zion's perimeter defense than maybe Max is. Not more so than Ayton or anything. Not like disagreeing with that. I think Ayton definitely showed some flashes there this year. Obviously, you two watched more than I did of him. But I think he did some really good things there. But anyways, with the shot, Ayton got a lot better as the year went on. I mean, he shot 37% in conference play from three. And not many attempts. He was only 10 of 27.
Yeah.
But he got better. And the fact is that, he has really great touch around the rim, whereas Simmons isn't great around the rim. I mean, his percentages are solid. I think he was maybe around 68, 70% his first 2 years, but he doesn't really have a float or anything. A lot of his shots are just sheer forcing the ball in. And Zion shoots a pretty soft shot from three. It's kind of weird, but a lot of his makes were really soft. They would kind of just roll in the rim or whatnot, which I think is a good sign. That's, if we just want to touch on his teammate, a guy like RJ Barrett had a lot of ugly misses from three or the free throw line, which is, I think it's tough. I didn't watch every three-pointer they took this year, but I like it when a guy has soft touch around the rim and has soft touch from three. That's always a good sign.
Great point.
But you both touched on a lot of really good things with regards to the Ayton Zion fit. I like how you you made sure I think a lot of times we focus so much on how two guys or three guys fit together offensively and not enough defensively. And if we do talk about defense, it's that one guy's a good defender, one guy's a bad defender. Whereas Zion is a fantastic instinctual help defender around the rim or wherever it is, flying into a passing lane, and Ayton's instincts haven't been great there off the ball, both in college and in Phoenix. But he's definitely shown some really good lateral mobility. I haven't watched either of those Bucks-Suns games. It's something I really want to watch this summer, just because I did hear a lot of good things about how he defended Giannis, so I'm curious to kind of get an actual look at that. But I think that's a really good point about the defensive fit, is you have a guy who's obviously a long way to go defensively in Ayton, but has shown some pretty good things on the perimeter and on the ball when he's really focusing. He doesn't have to make his own reads. And then you have Zion, who's just a monster around the rim. Offensively, I think David touched on it. They're gonna when those two guys are in, their rim shooting frequency and efficiency is gonna be insane.
Yeah.
And while neither one's a great shooter right now, that there is an under discussed idea of vertical gravity. When Ayton rolls to the rim or something and two guys are going to have to come at him or vice versa, I think both have shown to be pretty good interior passers. I think Zion's obviously better in that regard, but there's going to be, if maybe one of them sitting in the corner and Zion rolls to the basket and both guys come at him and then Ayton crashes in from the corner and that little drop-off pass.
This, Max, is why I believe you love Brandon Clark and why I love the fit with Brandon Clark if Zion isn't someone that we can get.
It's one of the many reasons why I love Brandon Clark. I love Brandon Clark for 7,000 reasons.
But I just think the idea that despite neither one really being a plus shooter right now or commanding a lot of attention beyond the arc, they're going to command all the attention in the paint. And the fact that both of them are pretty solid playmakers for their size. You have Booker off the ball, or you have a guy like Kelly Oubre who's proven to be fine as a catch and shoot player, or a guy like
Mikal Bridges. Don't forget Mikal.
There you go. I knew I was missing some other shooter. Yeah, the fact that if your two big men can create on the short roll or capitalize on their vertical roll gravity or whatever is super valuable. You don't have just two guys who can finish at the rim in the pick and roll and can't pass for shit. You have two guys who can finish and they can pass pretty well for their size and their position. Both are going to be totally fine there by the year 2021, 22 or whatever. When I think it's a legitimate chance they're in high leverage playoff situations or whatever it may be.
Right. There'll still be a ways to go. I just want to clarify one thing because I agreed with something you said and I want to make sure that I don't disagree with it. I think Zion is a good perimeter defender, generally. I don't think he's bad at it.
Yeah.
Ayton just has that size. He's able to contain somebody like Giannis. Giannis, he's 7 foot, whatever he is. Who the hell knows how tall he is. And then he has the arms, too. I think, it's possible Zion might struggle with somebody like that. Ayton's just big enough.
Yeah.
That's what makes him different. That's the only point I wanted to distinguish because I think everything else you said, I totally agree with.
I see what you're saying for sure. Zion's 6'7", whatever it is, and Giannis just has that kind of overwhelming length and whatever. So yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from though.
So we're gonna save RJ for the Culver discussion because I think that's an interesting comparison as a preview. But let's go ahead and move into Ja Morant because that's somebody who Suns fans really, really like. He plays the position of need. He's, obviously has the highlights, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, I actually haven't seen. I don't know where you are on him, but first of all, where are you on him? And then also, do you think he's somebody that makes sense for the Suns?
Yeah, I'm definitely a little lower on him than I think some of the consensus is, which I think is could probably be the tagline for Draft Twitter. I'm lower on him than the consensus, or I'm higher on him than the consensus, vice versa.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of the upside. I see the appeal, but for me, some of the worry is we talked about it with draft philosophy. I'm worried about him in a scaled down role. I don't think he's great off the ball. He showed some nice flashes as a cutter at times, but there were a lot of times when he was just kind of loitering around. And whether or not that's just a product of him having an insanely huge workload on that Murray State team we'll find that out soon. But I just worried about him in a smaller role. And then I'm not sold on the shooting. I know some people maybe a little higher. They point to his free throw percentage and whatnot, but that shot is just so ugly. I mean, it's not Lonzo Ball bad, but it's like two-handed. I think I've read that he's a natural lefty and he shoots righty, and so while it's fine, it just looks like it's such a push shot. That really concerns me. And he was about 34% in college. Maybe he'll be better if he just takes more spot up threes. But I think to be a really, really good lead guard or primary creator, you have to have that pull up game, and he just doesn't really have that right now, especially just pulling up off a pick and roll or whatnot. He was either kind of dancing into a step back three or attacking the rim. Not a lot of mid-range pull-ups. I know we're not like, I don't want to be, I don't like him because he can't shoot a mid-range pull-up. That sounds absurd in 2019. But, you look at the best primary creators in the league right now, it's guys like Dame and Steph and Harden, even a guy like Booker to an extent. All those guys can shoot efficiently off the dribble from three and from mid-range. And I just don't quite see Ja being there. And then obviously that's not even touching on his defense, which is really bad. You could look at a guy like Ben Simmons, where the defense was terrible at LSU, and now he's. But again, I think I see the star upside. He's a heck of a passer. When he's on the move, he's really tough to stop.
Yeah,
his athleticism is a little overhyped. He's getting compared to guys like Westbrook and De'Aaron Fox. I don't think he's on that tier. I think he's a lot better when he's actually on the move, getting downhill. I don't think from a standstill he's anywhere close to the explosive, quick first step that a guy like Fox or Russ has or had coming in as a prospect. So I just have some concerns. I don't think...
Max, I want you to jump in here because I know you've probably got a little bit to say on Ja, and it is ridiculously uncanny how Jackson has touched on pretty much the 4 or 5 main things that I wanted to say on Ja. So I'll finish on that and tie those links in. But how about you let us know what you're thinking about Ja at the moment?
No, yeah, I agree. Jackson covered a lot of what I think too. The one stat I wanted to point out, because I think this is the one that scares me the most with Ja Morant. I looked on Sports Reference. It goes back to 2007, at least for turnovers. And I found that I've tried to find the only players who had 5+ turnovers per game in that time span.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been 4. There's been some guy named Kevin Galloway, some guy named Josh Sharkey, and then Trae Young and Ja Morant. And I think it's really interesting because those two are being compared. But I think people are going to look at that and be like, hey, well, Trae Young's good, so what's the problem?
Yeah.
Trae Young was a baby little freshman in the Big 12 who, was just trying to lead this team, in a really good conference, and it wore down after a while. And I think that's different than Ja Morant, who was a sophomore in the Ohio Valley Conference.
Yeah.
And by the way, his turnover rate was just as high in the conference play. It's just like, oh man, he's not a good decision maker right now. I'm not saying he could never be, but what really worries me about him is as much as he piles up the assist numbers, he was just playing against competition that wasn't as good as he was, and he was just the entire team. I see the boom upside. I agree with Jackson that the star upside is definitely there with him.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if there's somebody I've seen in the last few years who has the biggest chance to bust out of like any of the high level prospects that I've watched, it's this guy, man. A lot of his scoring thing and the 24 points per game, which looks great. It's a lot of using his bounce and his athletic superiority to dominate players who aren't as good as he is,
and getting to the rim a lot, which he's
gonna all the time, right?
Yeah, find a lot harder in the NBA, particularly to start with.
And how many times did you watch him finish by like running into people? that were like white guys who were 6'8".
Yeah, and he didn't show a lot of vertical leaping that you want to see from. I mean, the comparison they keep throwing out that I'm referencing is a guy like De'Aaron Fox. Like De'Aaron Fox, like jumps over like 6'10" dudes all the time. You know, and there were a lot of times.
I want to get into that too, Jackson. No, James, I'm glad you brought him up because I hate when people compare Ja Morant to De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox is like one of the. He is a rare unicorn prospect. That dude, if you listen to him talk, he's something president of the United States, first of all. He is like the most eloquent person I've ever heard in my life. And then also, on the athleticism point, he is the quickest player I've ever watched in college in my entire life. He really is. He's insane. Yeah. Ja Morant can jump, and he's really athletic. He's not that. He just isn't.
Well, he just didn't. I saw a lot of times where he struggled to finish around size and length. He didn't quite may have the leaping ability that you want to see from a guard like that who's going to have a lot of his offensive value predicated on finishing at the rim. And touching on a different point guard comparison, you said the Trae Young Morant one. Morant is a very good passer. Don't get me wrong. He can do a lot of great things, both hands, kick out to the corner, skip passes, pocket passes. Mm-hmm. Trae is just on a different level as a passer. Like just the IQ, just the things he could do at his size with either hand as well. So I get that comparison, but if you watch enough of those guys and you watch Trae this year, the things he can do as a passer are just on a different level than Trae. And so while you look, like the turnovers, whatever in college, like you bring up the context of conference play and all that, but just from a passing perspective, Trae is just a lot better and a lot smarter on things he can do and the instincts he has as a passer and reading the defense in a way that I don't think Ja has shown or is going to show.
And he can shoot. He could shoot from the outset, which, that's
really shoot.
That's the biggest question mark on Ja right now. And, I love his point guard skills. I love his vision. I love that dexterity. Some of the passes that he made are kind of, making the highlight plays. But, the truth is that a lot of that becomes overrated, particularly at the pointy end of the season in the playoffs. I think Jackson, I'll touch on the things that you kind of uncannily touched on throughout your bit at the top there. But, you think of the playoffs right now and, what lead guys can't shoot. Westbrook obviously knocked out in the first round. Everyone that's still standing right now are kind of lead guys that are dangerous off the dribble. And, other than I think one game in March where Ja had that ridiculous start to maybe their first or second match in March Madness where he kind of hit a ridiculous amount of shots from three, that is a big question mark over the larger sample size of his full college play. So that plus the defense, particularly in Phoenix with a guy like Booker, would just be a disaster, and we need to, be pretty cautious about that. Jackson, you made the Simmons comparison, and I think it's a comparison that's going to get made because of heavy workload, how interested is he in playing college, etc., etc. But something I've mentioned with Simmons a lot is there was stories of him competing with pros at night camps, guys like James Harden, LeBron, KD, and defending them before he even went to LSU. And I think, it's a dangerous comparison to make, just like it's a dangerous comparison to make to Trae Young, to kind of just nitpick one little thing and use that as the justifier of why Ja Morant is going to be okay. And then probably the last thing, which you mentioned right at the top there, is James Jones made some really interesting comments this week, Max, about, or it was leaked out, I believe. I don't think James Jones made it directly himself, that, Ja wouldn't start on the Suns if they selected him, and they'd look to get a veteran point guard in to cover that duty for the Suns. And Ja's a guy that I'd love to be in the room at his interview at the Combine for. Mm-hmm. I'd ask him that question. I'd want to hear his answer to, whether he's open. You'd expect all, cocky young point guards to kind of say, no, I want to start. But is it going to be a negative answer from that respect? Or is he going to say, I'm open to it and competing for the spot, and, I only want to start if I'm deserving of starting? Because as Jackson said at the top there, in a lesser role, it would be really interesting to see how Ja both takes to that and also how he performs on the court, Max.
Yeah, and that's a whole other problem with Ja Morant, is even if he becomes the star that we, the people who love him hope he becomes, and I honestly, we all can kind of see that he can become that at some point.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely to happen early. That almost never happens with any point guard, especially one who's, kind of with the way he plays. Mm-hmm. So, if he's not a star right away, what is he for the Suns? The Suns have Devin Booker, who they're obviously trying to build around. like, to the extent you're taking the ball out of Devin Booker's hands and giving it to somebody who's bad, like we saw what happens with that. It's Josh Jackson. Like, how much do you want to watch a shitty player have the ball in his hands for the next 2 years? Like, this team needs to win, like, soon. Like, we were supposed to win last year, so if we don't win next year, like, when are we going to win? So it's like, if you draft Ja Morant, this is too strong, but almost it's like, then you might as well fucking trade Devin Booker. I swear to God, I almost feel that way. Because, like, it's so hard for me to see Ja Morant and Devin Booker working together within the next 2 years that it's just, it's such a hard, I don't know, man. I don't like it. This is why I said earlier that I think there's a 100% chance to get the number 2 pick, because I think this is going to happen to me.
Yep. And we've got Did You Know to put in the middle there, but that's a great segue into why I have a guy that we're about to talk about very soon above both Ja Morant and RJ Barrett now. And I think Jackson mentioned it before with RJ's. Both of those guys, to reach their kind of peak potential in the NBA, you've kind of got to hand over the keys and build around them. And as you smartly say, Max, that the Suns aren't in a position to do that.
Well, I think at least with RJ, you can see, like, I can foresee a role where he's a second or third guy and does well. But my issue, it's different a little bit than Ja, where I would think he would struggle in that role. My issue is I think people see RJ as number one, and that concerns me. I worry that. And I think that maybe that's a little too unfair. Maybe that's unfair to him and for me to assume how teams are going to deploy him. But I just worry that they see this guy who was he put up 23, 7, and 4 at Duke. He was the number one ranked guy in his class, and they see him as a star who can be the number one guy on your team from the get go. But yeah, so I think I have concerns with them for different reasons in terms of being the number one guy. But yeah, I think for every reason that Max touched on is totally fair. I would say though that I think a lot of these guys are going to take time. We've been spoiled with the last couple of years with really, really good classes who are performing from day one. Where I think there's a lot of nice guys who can help fill a need as a role player. I don't think it's quite maybe as bad as some people are making it out to be. At the top, I see where it falls short compared to recent classes, but I do think there are a lot of guys who can be useful.
Yeah, I think the difference is taking time is fine when you're a wing or you can, fill a small usage role. Taking time is tougher when you're a lead ball handler.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's a good point.
Okay. Wait, should we go to Did You Know now?
All right, Max, with Jackson joining us for the full episode, I thought it was only right to both keep it short and also involve him as much as I could on this one. So you're off the hook this week, and I will deal with Jackson specifically. So guys, did you know no Gonzaga Bulldog has played in the NBA for the Phoenix Suns? That's right, the team that Jackson has followed and written about has had 17 players make it to the NBA, but never has one been drafted by or played a single minute for our Suns. Quiz time for you, Jackson. Can you name any past Gonzaga player who made it in the NBA?
I think I'll go with an obscure one. I'll go with Dan Dickau.
Ooh.
Played for the Blazers for a few years, a couple other teams, but I know him from his time as a Blazer, a couple years. But then you got the more recent guys, Zach Collins playing for the Blazers now, and Kelly Olynyk, obviously.
Yep.
I don't know if obviously Nigel Williams-Goss never played in the NBA, but the Jazz have his draft right still. You have the John Stocktons, obviously, but it would take me a while to think of the other guys.
I'll throw the rest that I've got written down now. So John Stockton, easily the most famous of the lot, as you mentioned. Adam Morrison, who was picked third in the 2006 NBA draft. There's some current players, as you said, Kelly Olynyk, Zach Collins, Domantas Sabonis, and Jonathan Williams. A few recent players who I first watched in college because the adopted Aussie program at St. Mary's, led by Patty Mills, brought up many rivalry games with Gonzaga. But yeah, Robert Sakara, Austin Day, and Jeremy Pargo were part of those teams that I watched early on. And then there's one of my favorite past players who ended up playing for 7 NBA teams, the most by any Bulldog. The teams were Golden State, the Clippers, the Lakers, Miami, Minnesota, New York, and Washington. Jackson, this is
Ronnie Turiaf.
Oh, well, you've beat me to it. I was going to give you a couple of chances there, but yeah, Ronnie Turiaf was the one from 2005 to 2015 in the NBA. So that was an interesting one. I'll throw another quiz, seeing you got that one so easily. Can you tell me which player played for the Suns at the 2014 Summer League from Gonzaga? Double points if you can get this one.
2014. The 2014 Summer League. That might have been the start of their Sweet 16 run. Trying to think like what team that was. It might have been like a.
I'll give you a big clue. We've mentioned a relative of his already.
Is it David Stockton?
It is. David Stockton might
My
be.
My first gut was going to say Kyle Wiltshire, but then I realized he was a couple years later to enter the league.
Yeah, so David Stockton might be the Bulldog who's come the closest to anyone with a link to the Phoenix Suns. As I said, in 2014, he had a draft workout with the Suns along with Jordan Clarkson, of all people. At that workout, he noted that the Suns coach, Jeff Hornacek, at the time, coached him in the 3rd and 4th grade and joked that Hornacek had taken a bit of a step up since then. But while Stockton's 6-game NBA career with Sacramento and Utah, with a trip over to my local league, the NBL, with the New Zealand Breakers in the middle there, isn't exactly anything to write home about, he does have an interesting tie to the current state of the Phoenix Suns, which, guys, we will end on this week. After going undrafted in 2014, where he worked out for the Suns, he returned to suit up for the Suns in Vegas Summer League. He then returned to Vegas in 2017, again to play with the Phoenix Suns. So here's the final test. And Jackson, this will be a tough one, but you can probably just go with a random answer here. But stay with me for a minute. In 2014, Stockton ran point on a team that had 4 players that are still in the NBA today. In 2017, the 15-man roster had 8 guys who are still in the NBA last season. If I asked you how many of those total 12 players from both seasons were now on other NBA teams that aren't the Suns, how many would you guess?
So these are Suns Summer League rosters?
Correct.
14 and 17 other NBA teams of the 12. So there's 12 guys that are still in the NBA?
Correct.
I'm going to go 8 of them are on other teams.
Ooh, really close. The answer is 9. Seth Curry, Alex Len, and Miles Plumlee from 2014, plus Marquise Chris, Shaq Harrison, Derrick Jones Jr., Devon Reed, Tyler Ulis, and Christian Wood from 2017. In fact, the only 3 that are still with the Suns, which makes up the 12, are Josh Jackson, Dragon Bender, and TJ Warren, all of which look to be on shaky ground this offseason to return with Phoenix. So, Max, I know you'll be happy if Brandon Clark becomes the first ever Gonzaga Bulldog to play for the Suns, but there's also Rui Hachimura in this draft, who I believe we're going to talk about with a couple of other prospects here.
Yeah, I'll be a little less happy if Rui Hachimura is the first Gonzaga to play for the Suns, but
stake through my heart.
But yeah, we're getting on to our next part of our draft, though. Let's get into Jarrett Culver, a 20-year-old sophomore.
Silk!
From the NCAA runner-up Texas Tech Red Raiders. He's listed somewhere between 6'5 and 6'7. I think he's close to 6'7 these days. 200-ish pounds. He's listed as a 2 often, but he's more of a wing.
Yeah,
I've seen wingspan guesses from 6'11 to 6 or 7'1, but he's 7'1, I think, or at least. He's got a big wingspan. He'll be 21 years old next February. David, where's Culver going in mocks?
I'm glad you touched on the height and wingspan there, because I definitely wanted to bring that up, because I think we're underselling him on the current measurements. But last time I looked, the Stepien had him at number 2, Max. Red had him at 4. ESPN had him at 6. Bleacher Report had him at 4. The Ringer had him at 4. Sam Vecini's mock draft, I believe, had him at 5. And Yahoo had him at 5, Max. So pretty consistent inside the top 5 for Jarrett Culver. And I'll start off by saying I've slotted him in at number 2 on my board, Max.
Wow, Jackson, what do you think? Where you have him, and what's your take on him?
Yeah, no, I got him. I got him there as well. I want to say the first guy I know that had him number 2 was Ross Holman. I think, who writes for the Stepien.
I can tell you, guys, it's Stepien. It's Stepien. Go on.
Stepien. There we go. Gavel down. It's Stepien. But anyways, yeah. So I got him 2. I'm partial to wings. I think if you're bigger, it's easier to make an impact in basketball.
Yeah.
Or at least if you're a wing, I think. I really like a lot of kind of his all-around game. I think his defense is phenomenal. I think that's a really underrated part of his game. I really like the passing as well. I think he can make a lot of really nice passes. And then, yeah, the size is interesting. I got to watch him up close twice when I was covering Gonzaga at the Anaheim Regional. I want to say he's probably about 6'6", 6'5" in basketball shoes. That's just me. I didn't get a super up close look of him standing staying up. Obviously, I talked with him a couple times, but he was sitting down. So yeah, I think he's about 6'6", 6'6.5". I wrote a piece on him maybe about a month ago over at the Step Back at Fansided, and I think I gave him like a 6'10", 6'11 wingspan. But yeah, I've got him too. I just think he could do a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Little worried about his own scoring upside, but I'm not that worried. The shot, I think, is something that's going to be talked about a lot in the next month or so. But I think it's really important to note that he changed his whole shot form between his freshman and sophomore years. He shot like 38% from three as a freshman, but it was ugly. It looked a lot like Alonzo Ball, to be honest. He started on the left side of his face.
I would say
kind of slingshotted it.
For anyone listening, go and watch him. Go watch freshman Jarrett Culver shoot the basketball versus the last season Jarrett Culver, because as you said, it's night and day, and very much still a work in progress there, I think, and there's reason to be optimistic about that, I think, Jackson.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the thing I noticed a lot watching him is the release itself is still inconsistent. There are times when it looks really smooth and you wouldn't have any issues with it, and there are times where there's still a little bit of a hitch in the release, which is natural. I mean, he changed it in the span of 8 months or whatever, and you try and change your whole shot form, and then you become the primary creator and lead ball handler. You're going to have some inconsistencies there. So I'm not worried at all. I think in due time it'll be fluid, it'll be smooth, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe his free throw percentage took a significant jump as well. Which I think is always a good sign. I think anyone who's kind of embedded in draft Twitter or just NBA Twitter in general knows that free throw shooting is an important kind of barometer of being a good three-point shooter. Yeah, he went from 65% to 71% from the free throw line.
Which still isn't great, but, going in the right direction, I suppose.
He's growing, he's getting better there. But yeah, doubling his volume from free throw line and jumping up 6% is a huge encouraging thing for me. But yeah, I'm just a huge fan of all the different ways he can make an impact on the game. And I think to an extent maybe versatility can get overrated sometimes, but I don't think he's just kind of okay at a lot of the things. I think he's really good at a lot of things.
All right, so I guess I have to be the asshole here. When I first watched Jarrett Culver, I was really in on him when he was a freshman, and then I watched him again. Even the first time I watched him this year, I was really in on him.
Yeah.
He is very easy to fall in love with. He's really fun to watch. He's so smooth. He's silky. That's why David calls him Silk.
Yep.
He's awesome. I love him in my heart. My brain is terrified of him. I don't like guys, and this is something that I've just developed over time, just watching a lot because I'm old. Guys in college who are not great at anything but are really, really good at a lot of things tend to not translate. I get concerned because you guys are right. He changed his shot. Fine. I agree that the free throw percentage went up 65-51. That's great. The three-point percentage dropping to 30, not great, especially because it started early in the season great and went down to 20 later on.
Mm-hmm.
The true shooting overall went down. He was less efficient this year as a sophomore, which scares me a little bit. The passing is good. I agree. I love a lot of the passing, but he was still a 3.7 assist, 2.7 turnover. It's not the best ratio of all time.
Yep.
I love the defense. I think the defense is going to be good. I'm not concerned about the defense. I'm concerned about what is his offensive, what's he going to be year one, year two in the NBA? What's his calling card going to be? What's he going to do on offense? And the comparison, and this will be, Jackson, you're a Blazers fan. I'm not the first one to make this comparison, but this guy's Evan Turner to me. I swear to God, I'm watching Evan Turner 2.0. If you watch Evan Turner in college, he was actually better than Jarrett Culver is right now, but very similar. Did all the same things. He was great at everything, not elite at anything. And those are the kind of guys who freak me out. Because in the NBA, you need to be elite at things. If you're not elite at anything, you're not really anything. You're what Evan Turner is now. You make $72 million a year, and you're a bench player who sometimes just is not there. So I guess my question, I'll direct it to either one of you, whoever wants to go first. What's your rebuttal to that? What do you think Jarrett Culver on offense is going to be great at right away?
I'll kind of go into that. So I get the concerns with the efficiency from three and the overall scoring efficiency. And that's something I actually kind of addressed in the piece I wrote about Culver last month. He played a role that was well beyond what he's going to be asked to do in the NBA, and that was well beyond what he should be doing in college. He was a primary option on a team that wasn't great offensively, and I think if you get him on a team like the Suns, where he's the second option on the perimeter, that's awesome. And so while I think the assist to turnover ratio isn't ideal, he had to just force so many passes and so many plays, and that I think he is a guy to a little bit to an extent that you just have to trust the tape.
Yep.
I think there is a lot of value in statistics and But I think so often with college prospects, they play roles that are not the ones they're going to play in the NBA, and they're thrust into such high-use situations. I do understand the concerns with his scoring efficiency, especially in scoring role. He's not a great athlete. He has a solid first step. A lot of his ability to get to the rim is crafted on kind of offbeat rhythm and whatnot. But I would just say that I think when he's not shooting a ton of pull-up jumpers, his three-point percentage is going to be a lot better. He's such a great finisher. So many different ways to score at the rim, which I love. Mm-hmm. But I understand some of the hesitancy. But the Evan Turner comp, I think I get. But at the same time, he's like Turner, who if Turner could defend and actually shot threes. And even then, that distinguishes him. And I think he's going to be a fine three-point shooter. And I think he has all NBA defense upside. Like, I think he's that good defensively.
I will say that real quick. Evan Turner was a much better three-point shooter in college than Jarrett Culver was.
That's fair, but God, Turner's form is so bad.
I think the jump is still very much a work in progress, Max, as I said before. If you go back and watch the freshman stuff, there was a real hitch in it that he got out in his sophomore season, but there is some it's a little too wristy at the top end of the release, which I think he still needs to work on. I think that really affects his deeper NBA range stuff. So that's definitely a big question mark and something that he needs to get better at. But I guess to disagree with you and maybe end it on a positive note before we go with Coby White, I just think he's got a great feel for the game. He plays extremely hard. I think he's extremely smart on both sides of the ball, which I'm trying to value a hell of a lot more in prospects this year, Max, and I think it's one of the reasons why, in this draft specifically, I've got him jumping guys like Jarrett and RJ, because, as you said at the top there, your question, Max, like, what's he going to be in the NBA? I'm much more comfortable with what Culver's going to be in the NBA early on as a secondary piece that kind of adds to his skills, rather than someone like Jar or RJ that you've kind of got to tear things down and build around. So I'm really high on him. Obviously, having him at number 2 speaks to that. And I'm high on him from both ends of the ball. I think he can be a point of attack defender guarding kind of 1 through 3, and I think that's going to be super valuable with him in the NBA. And offensively, there's some stuff to work on, but I think it'll be a build for him in the NBA. I think he can come in and be that secondary piece. I actually really love the fit with the Suns from that respect over some of these other guys, as I mentioned. And then, who knows, on top of that, maybe he can. I'm pretty confident that he can be a 3-level scorer in the NBA eventually. And I think he's the best non-Zion prospect in the class to have a legitimate chance at being an impactful two-way guy in the playoffs. The guys like Butler, Kawhi, to a lesser extent Middleton in these playoffs. I think that's kind of what I see in Jarrett Culver right now.
So I want to be real clear here. I don't hate Jarrett Culver. I'm extent playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I still have him like top 5 or 6, probably top 5 by the time everything's done.
Yeah, of course.
I just see some lack of upside with him to a certain extent. But I want to ask you guys a real quick question before we move on to Coby White, and we'll move on after this. Would you rather have Mikal Bridges or Jarrett Culver on your team going forward in the NBA?
Why not both, Max?
No, you got to pick one.
I actually, touching on what I mentioned before with the fit with Booker, I think both having Culver and Bridges, if you're high on Devin Booker being point book, I think they're the perfect 2 pieces to have either side of him.
No, you got to pick one, David.
If I had to pick one, I'd actually go Jarrett Culver.
Okay, how about you, Jackson?
I think I would go Bridges, to be honest. I like Culver a lot, but I think Bridges is going to be a phenomenal 3-point shooter. He's already shown a heck of a lot on defense. I like Culver's defense a lot. I think he has all defense upside, but I do think there'll be some times when he struggles against quicker guys, and Bridges struggles there a little bit to an extent, but he's got probably about 3 inches of length and about probably 1.5 inches or so of height. I just think being bigger and it allows you to stay in front of guys easier. So I like his defensive upside more, and then I think he's going to be great 3-point shooter, both off the catch, off movement, and then he should have the ability to attack closeouts, and so I think that's all valuable, and the fact that he's shown all those things at an NBA level, didn't do all of them consistently, at least on the offensive end, was fantastic defensively all season. I just like the known commodities and seeing that he's already flashed a lot of those things in the NBA, whereas Culver is still an unknown because he hasn't played in the NBA.
For me, it's pretty easily Mikal Bridges, but I do love how I said the first thing I said when I watched Jarrett Culver is that David was going to love just the absolute F out of him, and I was right. So I'm glad I was right about that.
We know each other well because I'm pretty sure I knew the exact same thing when I watched Brandon Clark, Max.
It's true. It is really true. All right, let's move on to Coby White, a 19-year-old freshman from North Carolina, listed as a 6'5", 185-pound PG/SG, which we'll touch on. His wingspan is about 6'4" to 6'5", I've seen, so about neutral. He'll be 20 next February. David, where's Coby going to mocks?
He's pretty consistently around the 10, so the Stepien have him at 9, Red has him at 7, ESPN at 10, Bleacher Report at 8, the Ringer have him all the way at 16, although I'm sure that's going to be updated shortly. Sam Vecini had him at 8 in his mock, and Yahoo had him at 7, Max, and Coby White is fast. That's what I want to say very very much off the top, and I've nicknamed him Tar Heel, which is obviously not all that original with the team that he played for, Max, but anyone who follows me on Twitter would have seen the highlight that I posted where he literally backed a guy out of his shoe as if the heel of the shoe was stuck in tar, Max, so that's where that nickname comes from.
That's clever. You're clever sometimes, David. I have to give you credit. Jackson, you've studied Coby White closely. What do you think about him?
You've listed two guys that I guess I really like. Yeah, Coby is. I'm a big fan of him. I really should write my big board down somewhere besides Twitter, but I've got Coby number 5 on my big board. I haven't updated it in a while. Last time I tweeted it was late March.
Wow.
But yeah, he's my top point guard. I think he's got it, which is weird. I hesitate to kind of be that guy who intangibles, or maybe your listeners are gonna this guy's full of shit.
No, Jackson, they listen to us, man. That's all I talk about, so don't worry about it.
But no, I'm a huge fan of him. I got him 5th. Maybe I don't know if I'll have him quite that high when I solidify my board in the coming weeks. It's crazy that the draft's 5.5 weeks away, 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a huge fan. I love his shot creation. Like David said, he's super quick. It's kind of a little bit the same with Ja, where I think he's better when he's already on the move. But that shot creation, that step back jumper, didn't shoot great from 3. I think it's about 35% this year. Yeah. But that release is quick. It's fluid. Even though maybe it's a little bit from the side of the head. It's not great, but I'm not a shot doctor, and it looks fine. The free throw percentage is good. I really like him, and I think he's going to be a really good NBA player for a long time. And kind of, again, like Culver, maybe this is my archetype. I like the fact that he can defend. Yeah. I don't think that's talked about enough. He's got super active feet. He's lively. He's bouncy on that end. Cuts off driving lanes. He's better on the ball, I think. I don't have a great feel for his off-ball defense, but I think he's a smart enough player that the more I look at it, I think I'll be okay with it. But I just really like his defense. I've got quite a few just clips and sequences of him staying in front of guys with light on his feet, staying on his toes, being bouncy and jumpy, that really have me enamored with him, and the fact that I think he can be really good on that end is really valuable.
I think I know your answer to this question, so I'll throw it to Max. Max, would you take Coby White or Colin Sexton right now?
Oh, I mean, listen, I'm not a huge Coby White fan, and we'll get into that, but if we're talking about Colin Sexton, I'm going to take Coby White.
Yeah, I just think that's an interesting comp in that, we touched it at the top with him. He's not a natural point guard. He's a bit more of a combo right now, 6-man type guard, and I guess the big question with him is can he develop further into being more of a floor general, Max?
Well, I think that, and this is going back to what Jackson said, I think the it factor is there for me a little bit more with Coby White. Yep. I just feel like he gets what's going on the floor more than what Colin Sexton got. Mm-hmm. Also, he's not a good passer, but he actually is willing to pass, unlike Colin Sexton. Yeah. Also, I think the burst is better. And listen, I don't think Coby White has elite. He's fast. You're right, he's fast. He's not as quick as, obviously not as quick as De'Aaron Fox, but not even as quick as some of the second level guys. Yeah. I think the burst is great, but the burst and quickness are a little bit different to me, especially college versus NBA.
Yeah. Just having that one athletic skill coming into the league can be, quite useful, though. I think we've touched on it before quite a bit in terms of just, having something that you can come in and do right away and be a little bit of a standout, I think. Oh,
I totally agree. I think Coby will be right away an okay bench player. Yeah. My question with him is he ever going to be more than an elite bench player? Mm-hmm. Is he ever going to get to the point where could be because here's the problem with Coby White. If Coby White were a wing, I'd be really in on him because I think that he's good. And I feel good about him, but the problem is if you're going to be a guard, if you're going to be the lead initiator on a team, you have to be really fucking good.
Yeah.
Because there are only some of those guys who matter, and I'm not sure Coby's going to get there because he doesn't have like the elite shooting or passing or really the Trae Young skills or even Darius Garland, who I acknowledge has a lot of problems, but at least he has like that crazy pull up. Handling shot off the dribble thing that at least you could envision at least someday being in like an all-star level point guard. I don't see that one elite thing with Coby White.
Yeah, and
I don't think it's impossible.
Even if he was a 6'5" point guard with, a 6'7", 6'8" wingspan that could slide over to guard wings, that would be really enticing with him. But I agree with Jackson. His defense is good, and he's kind of got the effort and the tools there with the moving the feet. His off-ball stuff, I guess I have watched a little bit of Jackson. I think it's a little lackluster, but the negative wingspan really means that he's likely only a one-position defender despite his height. And I think what you've touched on there, Max, is if he did at least have the propensity to jump over and guard some wings as a point guard, it would make him a hell of a lot more intriguing as a prospect.
I'm so glad you brought up Colin Sexton. I think he's like a much better Colin Sexton.
I think he's a sixth man. I think you touched on it there. Is like that's his kind of ceiling. Maybe we should give Jackson a chance at the end here. He's probably a little higher on him than both of us to prove us wrong there, or at least explain why we're wrong, Jackson.
No, yeah. I mean, I think all the things you said are valid, and I do totally acknowledge that I don't think he has a ton of like huge star upside or anything. I mean, if he made one or two All-Star games, I think that would be a total win by every account.
Yeah.
But I just like in a draft that I don't think has a lot of good basketball players. I just think he's a very good basketball player who can fit a role that if you have him on a team that has like a larger primary ball handling team like the Suns or, like the Rockets or whatever, just guys who have 6'5", 6'6" primary ball handlers.
Yeah.
And let him be a spot-up guy, shoot off movement, attack and transition, create a little bit every now and then off the dribble. I really like that. My biggest concern offensively is, like you said, he's kind of got T-Rex arms, and I don't think he has, and as a result, I think he has fairly small hands because his dribbling isn't great. I don't think he's a very great ball handler. I think a lot of times that restricts him from getting into the lane. Last I checked, I think he has pretty good finishing numbers around the rim, but part of being a good finisher is getting to the rim itself. And that's a place where I think Ja has him beat. I have him a little higher than Ja. I think I had Ja 7 last on my board.
Yep.
Like I said, I could see myself rearranging that in due time. But yeah, I think the biggest concern is he going to be a guy who's so good shooting off the dribble and shooting off movement and creating step back looks that he offsets some of maybe his inability to drive the lane on a consistent basis. But I just think he's going to be a very solid player on both ends. Maybe I have a little bit of propensity to have safe guys ranked higher. Maybe that's another one of the things I enjoy in my draft philosophy. But I just see a good basketball player there on both ends.
I think that's fine in this draft. I'm kind of glad you touched on it, Max. I think we're all going to have a prospect like this. I think it just shows the sign of the strength or lack of in this class. I think, there's always going to be someone probably in this draft that goes in the top 10 or we have ranked in the top 10 that in other drafts we probably believe should be in the late teens, and maybe that's Coby White here, Max.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have Brandon Clark number fucking 2, and I feel like in most drafts that he'd be 8 for me and like 30 for others. So like I can't be here throwing stones.
Yeah.
But let's go on to Rui Hachimura, a 21-year-old junior from the Gonzaga Bulldogs. He is 6'8". 225 pounds. He is a power forward, and he really, really is a power forward. Mm-hmm. He is reportedly has a 7'2" wingspan. Sorry, not 6'2" wingspan. We probably would be talking about him if he had a 6'2" wingspan.
Frank Kaminsky.
He will be 22 in February. David, where is Rui going in mocks?
A couple of the dedicated places like the Stepien and Red haven't really ranked him yet because they don't go, I guess, as far down as where they're probably going to have him. But ESPN has him at 18. Bleacher has him at 10. The Ringer has him at 19. Sam V, again, a mock draft has him at 13. And Yahoo has him at 17. So he's really looking like a late lottery prospect at best at the moment, Max.
All right, Jackson, this is your guy. You're from Gonzaga. What do you think?
So this is a guy I'm not particularly high on. I think that falls in line with a lot of people on draft Twitter.
Yep.
The issue is that his skill set I don't think is conducive to being really good in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you're buying with him is his rapid development. He went from a Didn't play at all freshman year, or played sparingly in blowouts. Solid sixth man last year, who kind of came on hot in WCC play, and then he became a star this year. Averaged 20 points a game, 6.5 rebounds. Played for one of the best teams in the nation, All-American, all that. But I just worry, at a certain point, regardless of kind of where your background in basketball comes from, he picked it up late. He has good physical profile, and he just kept rapidly learning. At some point, you plateau with your development, and I just don't think he's shown enough.
Yeah,
big mid-range guy, kind of likes to muscle his way inside, get downhill. But I'm not sure he's going to be a great pick and pop guy from three. His shot's really flat.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about that to an extent. I don't think he has a super quick release. I think he's okay attacking closeouts. I don't think he's super dynamic there. And he's just so bad defensively, particularly off the ball. The instincts aren't there. If you want to buy into his defensive instincts getting better, all the power to you.
Yeah.
Just in general, when you're evaluating them, which is fine. You guys get better at that stuff. I don't think I just saw so many games this year. Obviously, that's the team I watched the most of anyone in college basketball this year. Just so many games where he, especially off the ball, just a guy would roll in and he would have to tag him and he would just miss it.
Yeah.
Or maybe he has to perform an X out and close out the guy in the wing rather than the corner, and he would just not do it. He basically, I don't know, maybe it's too harsh, but he was basically the reason they lost to Tennessee. They just kept running pick and pops with Admiral Schofield.
Yeah.
And he just he just couldn't read the play for some reason. He would just sit in the lane. And he got better there. He's okay on the ball, truthfully. Especially WCC playing conference play. He had some plays where he was able to kind of contain the ball handling on a hedge or a switch, and he kind of funneled into the baseline or forced passes. But just really worry about the defense. If it looked bad against college basketball players, I'm worried about what it's going to look like against NBA players who are smarter and move the ball quicker and more athletic.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what he's great at on offense. He's pretty good at sealing guys off inside with his frame and broad shoulders. He's good at putting his head down and kind of getting to the rim. Not an explosive leaper though. I think people maybe see him as that, and he's just not. The amount of times I watched him grab a rebound or go inside and get blocked, trying to finish in traffic. If I had a nickel, I'd probably have at least 60 of them or something. So I'd have $3, which would be awesome. But yeah, I just don't think he's great in there. And if he's not 6'11", he's not going to be towering over guys at the power forward spot. And I just hesitate to invest a lot or a high draft pick in a guy who crafts his offensive value as a mid-range guy. Not much of a playmaker, who struggles to defend, isn't much of a three-point shooter. That just doesn't sound like a guy I really want to bank on, even if I acknowledge that you are buying into some of that rapid development because he picked up basketball so late.
Yeah.
Just a lot of hesitancies with him.
That whole late bloomer tag is a really dangerous thing, I think, with prospects, especially for me, Max. You probably know, have fallen for that a little bit in the past. Elite physical tools has come to the game late. How much upside does he have? You can kind of fall into believing he's going to keep rapidly improving. But as Jackson said, there comes a time where there's a ceiling capped on that. And I'm trying to get better at not falling for those teasers. And I think he fails your can he play basketball test, Max. And therefore, I'm pretty low on him.
Yeah, I have not much to add here. He fails it miserably. He's very good at certain things that aren't important for NBA 4s and 5s. Mm-hmm. He's very bad at all the things that's important for NBA 4s and 5s. So unless he is, latecomerness makes him, in the next 3 years develop being really good at everything he's terrible at right now, I'm uninterested. I'm just not interested. That's basically where I'm at.
You know what my comp for him is, Max, after watching quite a bit of him offensively?
What's that?
We've had both of these guys on the Sun, so you should be able to at least understand where I'm coming from here. If you mix the games of the Morris brothers, that is Rui Hachimura.
Oh, no. Oh, that's the worst thing I ever heard in my life.
But without Marcus Morris's pull-up mid-range shooting and Markeith's pick and pop threat. But
yeah, I just think the down low game reminds me a lot of what we saw out of Markeith with the Suns, and then kind of the way he can kind of get out in transition a little bit, but also fall in love with the mid range is very Marcus Morris.
But he seems like a nice guy, right? So I guess two wrongs create a right. The two personalities combined.
Yeah, exactly. To use Jackson's Gonzaga link here, I got one last question to throw to you, and we could probably end on Rui Jackson, but how did Clark and Rui go together? Because the film that I watched, I noticed, a lot of the bad defensive stuff was plastered over the cracks by Clark, and a lot of the good offensive stuff, I actually noticed a lot of the time Clark wasn't on the floor when Rui did a lot of his good stuff down low and had a bit more space.
Especially early on in the season. They definitely had some awkward moments. They got better, I think. Mark Few kind of understood how to use them a little better as the season progressed. But it was certainly awkward at times. Two guys who aren't really street-shooters that would prefer to just hang around the rim as much as possible if they could.
Yeah.
But yeah, defensively, just the things Brandon Clark made up for. Not just with Rui, Josh Perkins, the starting point guard, was okay defensively, but not great. Norvell was hit or miss.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was okay. But it certainly wasn't ideal. They ran a lot of high-low stuff. Clark is such a good passer for his size. I think that's something that people who pay attention to him knew that, but didn't have a ton of assists. But they worked a lot of high-low game because Clark had such good touch as a passer or whatever. That helped a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't ideal by any means. They got better, like I said. I think they started to kind of use Rui as a spot-up shooter a little more. They'd run some pick and rolls for Clark, and obviously he can jump out of the gym, so that helped. And because Rui could shoot the three in a pinch, I think his 3-point percentage was pretty good on the year. Because he was so good from mid-range, it was better. It was a solid fit, but it definitely wasn't one of those things where they were kind of maximized together, I don't think.
Cool. I think we can leave it there, Max.
Let's do it. So we're going to move on to 7 seconds or less. I don't think we prepared you for this, Jackson, so get ready. So 7 seconds or less is the segment where one of the hosts asks the other and the guests 3 questions for which the other and the guests have 7 seconds or less to answer and have not prepared beforehand. David is going to be asking Jackson and me 3 questions. Are you ready, Jackson?
As ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
Yep. All right, David, let's go.
I'm going to be real strict on the 7 seconds this week, Max, because we've run pretty long. So, Jackson, I'll go to you first on all of these, and Max, you can go directly after. Question 1. Which team from outside the top 5, so those with less than a 10% chance, would you love to see jump up for Zion? It's Washington, New Orleans, Memphis, Atlanta, Minnesota, the Lakers, Charlotte, Miami, and Philly.
I mean, I gotta go Philly, right? Like, if I got to cover Zion, that would be phenomenal. I would just get to watch him, and that would be phenomenal and fun. So I gotta go Philly.
That's my favorite non-Suns one, just for the pure chaos. Max?
That would be so much. Mine's Memphis, which is an under-the-radar one, but I would love to see Jaren Jackson and Zion play together in the front court, and I would love to see Conley kind of be the point guard for this.
Love it. All right, question 2. Which team from inside the top 5 would you love to see slide back? So the Knicks, Cleveland, Phoenix, Chicago, and Atlanta.
Slide back, like in terms of...
Get screwed.
Get jumped by a few teams. Basically, have a dig at your least favorite team out of those 5, Jackson.
I don't want Chicago touching any of the guys I like. They're poorly run, and I don't think Boylan's a very good coach. They got some nice pieces there, but I don't want Chicago doing anything to do with a guy like Culver or Coby White or even RJ Barrett or Zion.
Not to be boring here, but I'm going to double up on that because they have so many players, so many positions already. Unless it's Zion for them, they're just going to screw up whoever they draft. So I agree with Chicago.
All right, fuck Chicago. So question 3. All Suns fans' dreams come true here, guys, and Phoenix win the lottery. The next 3 picks are as the odds go. So that's the Knicks, Cleveland, and then the aforementioned fuck Chicago. So who are the best fits for those 3 teams? I'll repeat them again. You got New York at 2, Cleveland at 3, and Chicago at 4. Jackson, go for it.
For the Knicks, I like Culver there. I think I'm not a huge fan of Knox, so I think I'm not a huge fan of even worrying about fit at that high level. So I'll go Culver 2.
Yep.
Cleveland was 3.
Yep.
I'm gonna go Brandon Clark. I think they struggle. They don't have a ton of good defenders on their team. I think Clark was number 3 on my board last I checked.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go them. I had Jonte Porter 3, but I'm still worried about him with the ACL or whatever, even though I think he's a tremendous player. And then 4, I would go with Chicago. I go Ja. They need a point guard. Chris Dunn's not the answer. That would kind of fill out their core moving forward. Even if you don't believe in some of them, they'd have at least 5 NBA players, I think, in Ja, Levine, Porter, Markkanen, and Wendell Carter Jr. So I'd go Culver for the Knicks, Brandon Clark for the Cavs, and Ja Morant for the Bulls.
Nice. Max?
I'll throw Ja Morant to New York just because, flashy, MSG, whatever. 3, Cleveland. I'll give Cleveland Brandon Clark just because I think he's the best player other than Zion.
Yep. And
then I'm going to go to Chicago. Let's give him RJ Barrett. They need someone to be the focal point because they have no focal points. Have him do the playmaking and have Lowry be the other guy, and maybe they can actually figure out what the hell they're doing.
Nice. That's it.
So that's it for us. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us. Plug whatever you want, Twitter handle, upcoming articles. What do you got going on?
I've been pretty dormant, just busy with school and doing the Sixers coverage. You can follow me on Twitter at JackFrank_JJF. If you're listening to this pod and you're curious about that Culver article I kept alluding to, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'll be happy to share the link with you. And then you can find my work moving forward. Fan side is the Step Back, SB Nation's Liberty Ballers. And then as long as the Sixers are still alive in the playoffs, you can find my post-game recaps for the Sixers at the Athletic Philadelphia. But yeah, that's all I got for me, and hope to have a great summer of NBA writing and draft coverage and all that. But right now I've been pretty dormant, I guess is the phrase.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate you listeners joining us. And as always, please rate, review, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. David, it was fun.
Yeah, shout out to those people who gave us 5 stars since last week and a couple of reviews as well, Max. As you said last week, we'll have to have an episode where we dedicate a little bit more time to reading them out. Probably last point is all my fingers and toes crossed for the lottery, and next time we are on the pod, we'll have the results, and we'll have to have some exciting pods talking about the prospects that are more likely in our range, Max.
I can't wait for it just to be happened and over with, so I don't think about it anymore. All right, thanks guys.